My name is David and Jai from Project Youth Empowerment, also known as P4YE. We work with young people and families in the community. Welcome to Unique Purpose.
How did you start your charity?
So the organisation was formed from 4 friends in the community. I think we became a bit tired of speaking about some of the issues pertaining to young people in the community. And before it got too close to home, we kind of decided, what could we do about things? How could we be proactive about things as opposed to being reactive? And this is no slight against people who, have negative situations occur in their lives and set up an organisation similar to ours. But yeah, we kind of thought, what can we do to address these issues before they come too close to our home? So we sat down, my colleague and my partner, Wayne, he was studying a criminology and psychology degree at the time, and I guess was the driving force behind pushing Project Youth Empowerment. So admittedly, I'll be open and honest about it. When we first started, I wasn't entirely sure how far we could go, but in a short space of time, I think through tenacity, hard work, commitment and consistency, we've proved that the work can be done. So when I speak about the 4 friends, only 2 of us remain, per se, from the original 4 friends that started. But we still continue, we're still striving, and we're still looking to achieve a lot more.
What's your goal with the charity? What's the aim?
So when we started, the goal was very simple, very clear, and it was to save one young person's life. Whether that can be measured, we wasn't entirely sure, because a lot of the work that we do cannot really be measured, and you don't see the work that happens behind closed doors to prevent something from happening. And I guess fundamentally that's who we are and what we're about preventative work. When we speak about goals, they change over time, as I'm sure you can appreciate. And it's about giving young people opportunities. It's about introducing young people to new things. It's about supporting families. It's about signposting families to services that are out there for them that they may not know about. So our goals are very big and broad. Every year we come back to the drawing table and we kind of think about what can we do to strategize for the next year going forward. But it's all about trying to save young people's lives, to preserve their lives, to try and give them positive opportunities and put them on a positive trajectory in their life.
Has it been hard because you were 4, now you're 2? Is the workload a lot for you too?
So in terms of directorship, there's 2 of us, but in terms of the wider team, there's more of us. So I guess we manage the workload accordingly. There are times when it becomes difficult and the workload can be a bit too much, but honestly, at times like that, we're quite sensible. We won't take on work that we can't manage, and we don't want to do an injustice to a young person or a family or another organisation who's referring a young person to us. So at that point, we will find a partner organisation who we work alongside and potentially refer that young person to them to ensure that they're given the best possible support and opportunities going forward.
How long has the charity been running for?
2 years. So we registered, should I say, in November 2019. Prior to that, probably for about 6 months before that, we were strategizing a lot. But in terms of the organization actually registering, it's been 2 years.
Where do you see the charity in the future?
I just want to continue doing the work that we're doing. But my main, and I guess going back to the question that you asked about goals earlier, my main thing from a personal perspective, and I'm sure, and I don't want to speak for Wayne, but I'm sure our views are very much similar. We want young people to be taking over the organisation. We want young people to be working with young people, if that makes sense. As young as I look and as young as I feel, I'm not as young as some of the other young people that work for us, for example, and they can have different type of conversations with the young people that we work with. And it's about empowering the young people that we employ and giving them the skills and the abilities, the tools, the support, the resources to be able to take over Project Youth Empowerment. Our whole premise is about empowering. So whether it's young people, whether it's families, whether it's employees, it's about empowering our communities, empowering ourselves. And fundamentally, that is who we are, and that's where the name was born from. So going forward, I would like to hire more young people. I'd like to have more young people on the books, devising ideas, creating content, and using their creativity to kind of move the organisation forward, per se.
What gives you that drive to keep going with this charity?
It's passion. I feel like I found my calling, so to speak, working with young people. I feel like in terms of communication, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but I feel like I'm a very competent communicator, and I can eventually get through to a young person or get through to a family and break down that barrier. I feel like sometimes, not being condescending towards the authorities, etc., but they have a very much tick box way of devising how they work with young people, whereas we can be a bit more relaxed. We can kind of deviate from the overall goal in order to achieve the bigger goal, if that makes sense. Because I don't think there's no pathway with any young person. And again, the way that we work with young people is quite bespoke. So it's about understanding what their needs are, what their interests are, and then working towards a goal together with them, as opposed to telling them this is what you need to achieve by a particular date, by a particular time, and putting further constraints on them, which I guess they face in their everyday life. When they attend school or any educational establishment, they've got a responsibility to hit deadlines, to achieve grades, etc. Whereas with us, we kind of look at things from a more holistic point of view, and we kind of open up the conversation wider to achieve what they want to achieve alongside what we want to achieve, and work together to get to that point.
And what's your biggest achievement, whether it's you or your business partner? What's your biggest achievement so far?
I guess it sounds pretty cliche, but I think the biggest achievement is still being here and still being relevant. It's not been an easy journey at all. So whilst we've had some very positive outcomes from the work that we've done, we haven't got here by just sitting back and relaxing. We've had to have some difficult conversations with ourselves outside. We've had to challenge ourselves. We've had to push ourselves. So I think, being here after 2 years in a world where we started in November 2019 and 4 to 5 months later, COVID started, we adapted. We started going out in the community and providing food free of charge to people, and it allowed us to engage with the community on a wider scale, as opposed to just working with young people. I always talk about young people and their families, because working with young people is one isolated thing, but the family is effectively the bigger social structure that we also have to compete with sometimes and work with as well at the same time. So yeah, I'm proud of the fact that after 2 years, and given everything that's been going on in the world, we've still been able to be here, be relevant, still support young people, still support families, and obviously see some positive outcomes from the work that we've done also.
What kind of positive outcome have you seen so far?
I'm talking about keeping young people in school. I'm talking about getting young people into employment. I'm talking about getting young people away from a negative life, a life of crime, getting them into employment, into training, into education, and kind of reintegrating young people back into society, so to speak. So for me, without speaking about one particular incident, those are the things that drive me and keep me going, and keep the organisation and my colleagues pushing forward, because we know that there's better outcomes for young people.
What kind of challenges have you faced as soon as COVID hit?
We couldn't engage with young people on a one-to-one basis personally, and I think that's a massive thing for us. The way that we engage with young people is very personable. So having to now mentor and work with young people over the internet and via Zoom, via MS Teams, was completely different. But we adapted. We started putting on FIFA tournaments online. We started delivering online sessions where we had guest speakers come in and speak to our young people. So I guess that was the biggest challenge that we faced, and the world adapted very quickly to working online. But at the same time, for us, it was a bit nervous because, as you can appreciate, young people were not used to that kind of interaction. So that for me filled me with a bit of joy, definitely.
Have you had any personal situations where it actually drove you to actually start this charity yourself?
Yeah, I guess, good question. I think going back to what I said earlier and not being reactive to situations is true. However, in, ironically, 2019, when the organisation started, my godson was on trial for attempted murder at the Old Bailey for stabbing a young man in his neck. The young man nearly died. And for me, it was a bit of a moral challenge within myself. And the reason why I say that is because I sat there in the courtroom for 2 weeks, and honestly, I'm just going to say it, I didn't want him to be found guilty. However, the reality of the situation is that he was found guilty. So this is a young man who is guilty of attempted murder, right? And if the shoe was on the other foot and he was the victim, I would be sitting in that courtroom and I would be seeking justice. I think what that taught me is that education is key, right? And it's about educating these young people from as early as possible. They step into this life of crime and don't really realize some of the consequences that are faced. And that's where, from a personal perspective, I definitely kind of took stock, and I kind of had to check myself and think to myself, well, you were pushing for one outcome, but that was very personal, and that's why I was pushing for that outcome. But when I take myself out of the personal situation, the reality is any young man who commits a crime and is caught for it deserves to face the consequences, because whilst it's my godson, carrying a knife, getting caught into that situation, it could have been worse. The young man could have lost his life, for example. So it's about deterring these young people and giving them, like I say, the opportunities to kind of step away from that life and seek more positive outcomes in their life.
Do you guys have any testimonies or personal results from the young people that you work with?
Yeah, many. And what it does, if I'm being honest, it never makes me or my colleagues, it doesn't fill us with ultimate satisfaction that we're getting positive feedback or testimonies. It just drives us to continue to do more. It was my birthday recently, and one of my mentees sent me a message, quite heartfelt, and spoke about how he saw our relationship not being a mentee-mentor relationship, saw me more as a big brother. And for me, I speak about three things when it comes to a mentee and mentor relationship: consistency, trust, and honesty. And I feel like delivering those things to the young people and getting that feedback back from the young people who don't potentially want to show their emotion a lot of times, who find it difficult to express themselves a lot of the times, having that sort of testimony was very personable to me, because it made me kind of realize, the work you're doing is worth it, and continue doing it.